We are joined by none other than author Amish Tripathi, or fondly known as Amish to all his fans and readers. He doesn't need much of an introduction after selling, what, 2.5 million books in India and worldwide. His Shiva trilogy has been a bestseller for several months and years now, and translated into several languages. Amish, it's a pleasure to have you on LitFestx, and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. My pleasure.
Amish, you've brought a new flavor around mythology to the average reader in India and abroad. Let me start by asking you, what is drawing you personally to mythology?
Firstly, I think I would say it's a good fortune of birth. I was born in a deeply religious family. My grandfather was a Pandit in Kashi, in Banaras. Both my parents are also deeply religious. So I grew up in a family where discussions on on our ancient texts, on our scriptures, on mythology, on philosophies. This was, a part of our growing up experience. So I guess that's a part of it. Secondly, look, I mean, no disrespect to the stories of our cultures, but I think our stories are really rocking. I mean, they're great fun to listen to. They're wonderful adventures. It has, many of them have romances, drama, war, everything. And what is equally important, if not more important, is that these mythologies, these stories, these Puranic tales have great gems of philosophy hidden within them, and which is the true point of reading these stories, that you learn philosophies and lessons on how you should live your own life. That's what truly draws me to them. And it's not just ancient Indian mythology. I would say ancient mythologies of cultures around the world. Egypt, Greece, Southeast Asia, ancient Mesopotamia, ancient Central American myths. Wonderful stories, wonderful stories.
Apart from the Indian mythologies, which you have of course studied a lot and written about in your novels, what about the international mythology, which has really impacted you? Can you give us some example and anecdotes?
So many, actually. I've read many of them: ancient Celtic myths, ancient Greek, Egyptian. The ancient Egyptian culture was actually not called Egypt. Neither was it called Misra, which is what we call it in India today. They called themselves Khem. The ancient Egyptians, they called themselves Khem, and their culture, their religion, their way of life, they called it Chemism, and that was also a path of wisdom, just the way our own ancient culture was. And many of their stories have deep philosophical thoughts in it. So the myths of Mahat, for example, the scales of justice. When a person died, how he or she, his heart would be balanced against a feather. And the concept was that if you fulfilled your karma, if you're free from all bondage, then your heart would be lighter than a feather, and then you could go past the gates of death into the afterlife. But if your heart was heavier, then you had to go back to earth. So the entire concept was in a way similar to many ancient cultures, including ours, that your purpose of life was to lead a good life so that your heart could be free. And you lead a balanced life of wisdom and faith and charity and everything, the entire thing put together. Any form of extremism was considered uh, a lack of wisdom.
Right. Interestingly, when you have uh, used mythology in your work, uh, how much of research do you rely upon, and how much of sort of the writer's freedom do you use when you are writing your works?
Look, there's no fine dividing line. It's very difficult to say that so much percentage was research, so much percentage was imagination. The thing is that one way of looking at research is, I've been doing research on these stories my entire life,
Right.
because I've been absorbing, listening to these stories, reading these stories for my entire life. And in our family, we are aware of various different versions of the same myths that exist. So you can say all that is research. But all that is like the ingredients for a meal, that can be there at the back of the head. How do the ingredients form together into a good meal? How does the knowledge form together into a good story? My honest view, and I don't care how it sounds. I don't care if whatever people may think of me. But I genuinely believe it's the blessings of Lord Shiva. I can't explain how all this knowledge converts into a good story. I wish I could, but I can't. I just open the laptop and the story just flows, and it's the blessings of Lord Shiva. That's what I genuinely believe.
That's that's very modest and humble of you, Amish, and clearly
No, it's the truth.
when you say the ingredients are there and it just flows through, so is it that at an innate level you have started to imbibe a lot of these philosophies and teachings and a lot of that material since you've grown up with it, and then you're just assimilating it into the sort of modern part of the story or the imagination part of the story?
Look, one way to approach the life of wisdom of our ancestors and of ancient cultures across the world was that it wasn't just something which was, a mental. The approach of the ancient cultures was that a life of wisdom was not just something where you studied books and debated about it. You actually had to apply that wisdom in your life. It had to be a part of your daily path of living. So wisdom was essentially about application in life itself, not just a mental study and a subject for debates.
Right.
So that was the approach, and one tries hard to try and apply it in life as much as possible. Yes.
Absolutely. Clearly those ancient texts across cultures were in many ways, schools or universities by themselves on how to lead life, through the ages. And
Mm,
in today's sort of highly complex and uncertain environment,
mm,
not just business wise, work wise, or in terms of our day to day sort of ongoings as well. How do you
mm,
think people are then adapting, some of the teachings from our mythological works into their daily
mm.
lives? Do you see your fans and readers sort of interacting with you at a more sort of imbibing level?
Yeah, I think yes, there is a lot of uncertainty in today's day, and which is a source of discomfort. There is sadly a lot of loneliness as well. And I believe there is a hunger for our ancient wisdoms. And I'm not someone who's anti the modern way of life. There are a lot of benefits of the modern way of life. Just to give you a perspective, the number of poor people in terms of absolute numbers is less today than it was in 1820. And that's the dramatic impact of the economic growth of the modern way of life. Even the middle classes today lead the kind of lifestyles that the royalty couldn't have lived 300 years ago. So there are some good things of the modern way of life. Some of the bad things are, of course, loneliness, uncertainty. Many people seriously don't know how to manage the emotional distress. There is a part of the modern way of life, the emotional and spiritual distress. So that's what I think is in that area. The wisdom from our ancient cultures can certainly help us find some peace.
Right. And tell me, how much do you think that, in terms of the coming together, if you see of what these ancient scriptures, professed about life, about the way one
Hmm.
should lead life, how much do you think that
Hmm.
is now coming true even in the modern age,
Hmm.
in terms of people's behavior, relationships, materialism, etc. How much do you think the
Hmm.
convergence is now evident? Um,
Uh, Look, I mean, it'll never be exactly the way it was in ancient times because they lived
sure.
in a different era. So following things literally may not be the wisest course of action. But most of the ancient cultures didn't actually prescribe that you have to do this every day. You have to do You have to visit a temple once a month, or a mosque, or a church. The ancient cultures didn't say that. The ancient cultures were more about, philosophical questions, which work as guidelines for you. So they weren't prescriptions. They were more like guidelines. And within those guidelines, you figure out what is the best way of life for you, so that you can be, happy, emotionally at peace, spiritually expanding. So I think that's a way to approach most of these ancient texts. So the real and the Indian scriptural texts are, they're not just one book. It's an entire library. It's like an entire graduation course. And the Ramayana and the Mahabharata are actually only the first steps. It's an entry into this entire library. Then you have to go deeper. The Brahmanas, the Aryanas, the Vedas at the graduation level, and the real peak, the postgraduate level, are the Upanishads, which are pure philosophical texts. And those aren't texts that you can just read lightly. You have to kind of, read a page, ideally have a guru teach it to you, and absorb those lessons. But they are more like philosophical guidelines, uh, which can guide you into what are the choices you should make in modern life. So they don't tell you do this. They tell you, if these are the range of choices available, what are the archetypes of the ancient past, what can you learn from, and then you make your own choice, and you live with the consequences, positive or negative.
Right. So when you are going about, creating your material, do you also, whether consciously or subconsciously, do you realize that you are, veering towards also giving your own understanding and version of what ought to be, practiced in today's modern life? Since you have been, growing up with these texts, since childhood, I'm sure a lot of it is ingrained now, where you have your own version, like you said, on what you think can be utilized and what is not really practical. So are you giving some of that distilled, if I can say, gyan to your readers?
Okay, there are two things. In the ancient way, there is no ought to be. Okay, there are no shoulds. There is no that you have to do this, is this. That's not a part of the ancient culture. The ancient culture is essentially about cause and effect. Okay, that you have, there's no judgmental God who sits on judgment on you. You are the only person in charge of your fate, in charge of your karma, and you benefit or suffer from the consequences of your choices. And the ancient way would give you suggestions on how you can make your choices. Okay, guidelines, philosophical thoughts. That's a way to look at it. And the second thing that the ancients taught is that there is no absolute truth. Okay, they believe that absolute truth existed only in one subject, which is mathematics. As Galileo said very rightly, maths is the language in which God wrote the universe. And most of us mathematicians, I'm a maths graduate, I graduated in mathematics, we genuinely believe, and it's actually the fact, maths is the only subject where there an absolute truth is possible. And 2 plus 2 is 4. आपको जो खाना है वो खा लो, 2 plus 2 is 4. There's no shade of opinion on it. But any other subject, there is no absolute truth. There is only your own perspective. There's always an observer bias. And ancient cultures accepted this, that you have your truth and I have my truth. And when I communicate, I'm communicating my understanding of my truth, as you will communicate your understanding of your truth. When you understand this concept, then you don't judge others, for their point of view, because that's their point of view. They're speaking their mind from their learnings, from their point of view, from their truth. So that's the ultimate, I guess, one of the key philosophies to realize of the ancient way. There is no absolute truth. And mobile phones. Mobile phonam nishiddham. It's there in the Vedas. so, the,
Listen,
so the point is, so the point is that you have your own perspective. There is no absolute truth, and it's natural that whatever you say will be colored by your observer bias. It's foolish to even deny it. So of course my point of view will be colored by whatever I've learned. in my life. My point of view is colored by the fact that I was born in India. I think of our land as as a holy land, as a blessed land. But that's my point of view. Someone born in Israel may think differently. Someone born in America may think differently, and that's their point of view. It's fair enough. It's foolish to even deny that my observer bias will not come into my point of view. It's obvious it will come in.
Absolutely. No, that's a very valid point, and certainly one. I think if the current debate, if you see, which is constant now, whether on social media or whether general public debate or on mainstream media on just about everything in life, whether it is religion, whether it is politics, whether it is business,
Mm,
every aspect.
mm,
I think if we
mm,
all started to understand that each one is entitled to their view and something can be discussed and shared peacefully, without any kind of physical or verbal abuse, would be a
mm.
phenomenal thing. Um,
True.
Amish, also we are fortunate that because of LitFestx, now your fans and readers can get a peek into what your you know working environment is like, and so I believe we are you're seeing you in your study at home, and I can see there's a phenomenal range of books behind you. Why don't you just give us a peek into where does author Amish do his thinking and do his scribbling and then do his writing.
Okay, this is my study, so it doesn't have all my books. There are other books in the other parts of the house. My wife also reads a lot, so there is her library as well. But my wife tends to give her books away once she's read it. She doesn't store them. I dislike giving away my books. Anything else I'll give away. My books, no. So my wife gets a little upset at times. Our house looks like a publisher's go down. So there are books everywhere, and I am trying to get into an ebook thing. My wife is a little more tech savvy, so she started that. I can show you around a bit. These are some of my books around here, and there are other books. And this, what you see out there, that is a painting of Lord Shiva and Lord Ganesh,
Wow.
uh, which it commissioned. A friend of ours did that. So this is my study. We have a view of the sea from here, Bandra and the Worli Sea Link and all that. So I don't know if you got to see that, but I turned the laptop around.
Sure. No, but this is great, Amish, and thank you so much for joining us, and
My pleasure.
for a very candid conversation. And we hope that you keep not just entertaining, but distilling some of India's ancient wisdom, which you have also imbibed, and you're passing on in your own flavor, in your own way, in an entertaining way as well, to readers across India and the world. And more power to your pen, and wish you all the best.
Thank you. Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you. Pleasure being here.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye. Take care.